You're fluent in 10 languages, but you didn't start that way.
It's always been this fascination about what language can do and the way it sounds. It's like music. I felt really that the language was coming to me, like I was absorbing like a sponge.
Right, well, I'm delighted to be joined by Stefano Suigo. Great to see you, man. How are you?
Good to see you too. Good, thanks. Yeah.
I am, well, all the better for seeing you.
Great.
Now, you are one of the most interesting language people, if I can put it that way, that I know.
Wow.
And you've got such an interesting background. And I want to ask you really a lot about your language. I mean, you're fluent in 10 languages, and you can get by in many more. And a lot of people say that, but you are. I know you are, because I have just spent a lot of time with you, and I've seen you use this language. And you really do have a unique, a very, very unique profile with languages. So hopefully, if I ask you a lot of personal questions, you'll be happy to indulge me.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and also thank you for this introduction. I'm not sure I deserve it, but
no, you're right.
Let's get into it.
It was just written for me, so I have to read it out. No, only joking. It's completely true. So let's just start with this. I mean, maybe you could give us a little overview of who is Stefano and what does he do, and anything else you think is relevant.
So, as you mentioned, my name is Stefano. I'm Italian from the city of Milan in the north of Italy, but I've lived in what feels like a heck of a long time. I've lived in Brussels, Belgium, for over 15 years. And well, I'm trained as a translator. And I actually worked as a translator for about 20 years. Then I decided to change things up, and I switched to teaching languages, my best languages, as a one-on-one online tutor. But actually, nowadays, I mainly work as a consultant for online language businesses and content creators on the design and development of online language courses. And it's been my specialty for the last few years, and I absolutely love it. I also have a YouTube channel where I share my passion for languages. But that's more of a recreational activity that I do on the side, nothing business related. But other than that, I just have an enormous passion for foreign languages. I've had that for my whole life, and that's pretty much it. Did I forget anything?
Run us through your languages. Which languages do you speak regularly?
Okay, so my mother tongue is Italian. I speak English, German, Portuguese, Finnish, French, and Romanian at a pretty high level. I also can speak some Spanish, Japanese, and Icelandic. And that I can get by in. I mean, I'm a beginner in a few other languages, such as Georgian, Chinese. That's it.
I'm interested in why you quit translating to be a teacher. Because for a lot of people, translating, people with an interest in languages, translating, especially at a high level in big institutions, is kind of like the dream job. And I remember when I was much, much younger, thinking that my dream job would be to become a simultaneous translator in the UN or something like that, And I just thought that would be an incredible life, and get to travel the world and be in all these interesting things. Now, knowing a bit more about the world, it sounds like very, very hard work to me. But tell me about that shift from translation to teaching.
So first of all, you're describing more the job of the interpreter.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
I think you know why? Because I have your wife in my mind. Your wife's in a that doesn't sound good, does it? I have your wife's job in my mind because we've spoken so much about it. So I was projecting onto her. Well, okay, so maybe let's start then. So tell us about interpreting and translation.
Yeah.
And then contrast that with teaching, and then maybe that will dig me out of this hole.
Sure. Well, when I decided I would become a translator, I didn't know this difference. So I also was thinking about becoming a translator with the interpreter in my mind. But actually, like, the difference is pretty simple. The interpreter talks translates languages by talking, and the translator translates languages by writing. So I have translated books, manuals, internet sites, things like that. So always written stuff. I've done that. I did that for 20 years. And, after 20 years of translating written texts, even though I absolutely loved my job and it has given me so much, what has been so rewarding. After a while, I started to feel the need to actually feel more in contact with people, with actual people, And so I tried out this opportunity to be a tutor, a community tutor for like practicing languages, for helping people practicing languages. And this connection that I was able to create with my students or the people I was helping was so powerful. The amount of gratefulness that you can see on their face at the end of a lesson where you have helped them, get over a hurdle or something, linguistically speaking, was so rewarding for me. And there I understood that I was doing the right I was doing the right thing, switching from translation after 20 years. I had given everything, and translation had given me everything that it could give me up to that point. It was time for a change. And it was a pretty good change at the end of the day.
Well, yeah, and also, I mean, I imagine the translation industry is in a funny place now. With AI. I mean, what is the state of the translation industry right now?
I think, as far as literature goes, not much has changed. But as far as technical translations are concerned, I think I'm no longer in the business, so maybe I'm talking a little bit like based on my previous knowledge, but I really think that it has become more like checking what automatic translation does.
Yeah.
To be able to, checking and like confirming that it's good rather than like creating from scratch.
Yeah, and I suppose any kind of technical translation has never been about the phraseology, has it? It's always been about just compliance, basically. So,
that's right.
If you're Sony and you're releasing a new gadget in the EU, you have to make sure that the instruction manual has it in like 18 different languages. ChatGPT can do that perfectly well, unfortunately.
Accuracy is much more important than style.
Yeah,
in that case.
Now, I'm curious, does your wife feel the same fatigue around interpreting? Because she's, as I understand, she's been doing it for as long as you have. She's been doing that for as long as you've been translating.
Pretty much. Yes. Yeah.
And is she as excited about it now? I mean, I was curious if that experience has tracked between the two of you.
It has not kicked in yet, that kind of fatigue.
And I wonder if that's because the interpreting work involves people all the time. So you're always interacting with new people and keeping.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
Okay, so you spent your entire career and life with languages.
That's right.
But you didn't start that way. I believe you grew up much like me in a completely monolingual environment. So how did you get into languages in the first place?
Yeah, that's right. I grew up in a monolingual environment. Nobody in my family speaks any other language than Italian, apart from probably my brother's broken English. But I mean, he's really good in other fields where I'm hopeless, so that's fine. But I discovered this passion for languages when I was at school, at elementary school. I think it was in my third year, so I must have been 8 at that time. And in my first English class, that was when I discovered that you can actually express the same thing, the same idea in 2 different ways. I mean, in a lot of different ways we know now, but at that time I thought, okay, Italian and English. So I have a different way to express the same thing. And this was a revelation for me. I was fascinated by this. And so much so that like English became my favorite subject. And then in high school, I picked up German, and I was, I think, 14 or 15 when I decided that I would become a translator in the future. I think I was the only person in my class who already knew what they wanted to become. Yes, that's when it started.
So it sounds like it was more for the language than for the people.
That's right. That's right. I think for me, it's always been this fascination about what language can do, and also the way it sounds. It's music for me. I mean, for me, it's like music. If I listen to a language and I like it, then I will probably start learning it. That's pretty much how it works.
It's really very interesting for me because I'm the exact opposite. So I've always been interested in languages for communicating with people. So the choreography of my life would usually be I would meet people from a new group of friends from a certain place. And then I would get interested in that country and culture, and I would learn the language in order to communicate with them. Now, that's worked well for me because I've always had to focus on speaking. So I've been able to, that's just helped for becoming quite functional in the language quite quickly because it's always been based around people. But the downside of that is when I remove myself from that environment, my interest in the language starts to disappear. Right?
Sure.
So, for example, when I lived in Egypt, I spent a year learning Arabic, got to a decent conversational level. I then left Egypt, went back home to London, and I haven't spoken a word of Arabic since.
I see.
And and so I've always felt that's, I mean, it's fine because that's just those are my motivations and I accept that. But it has made the issue of language maintenance quite thorny for me. So, people often ask me, Ollie, how do you maintain, I've learned 8 languages myself. I always get asked, like, how do you maintain your languages? And I don't. I don't because I really have no use for Arabic these days in my life and in rural England. But at the same time, that's fine because I know that if in the future I end up living in, Algeria or something, then I will pick it up. And I don't have any particular attachment there. But I understand that for you, it's quite a different story. Like maintaining your languages is,
you used a very interesting word. You used attachment. I like that. I think I feel that kind of attachment to the language itself. And this makes language maintenance so paramount for me. So important because losing what I have come to know about in a language would mean to lose like a piece of myself or something like that. I have this personal love, personal relationship with the language itself, which is obviously enriched by the people that I encounter thanks to the language rather than the other way around in most cases, obviously. But yeah, it's really, really important. So much so that I haven't really learned any new languages in the last 5 to 6 years. I'm on maintenance mode, as I often say, across the board. But I have to say that I knew this about you, about your way of approaching language maintenance as something that you don't need if you don't have the people you want to be in contact with. But I thought our position would be much, much more different than it actually is. Because after listening to your podcast episode about language maintenance, I actually found out that we are pretty similar in the way we consider, like, not really this, that we consider language maintenance as 2 different things. Because you often, in that episode, you often refer to maintaining languages as studying, like sitting down and studying or reviewing stuff about a given language. And then you say, well, I won't do that. I will maybe use the language a little bit or immerse myself for 1 week or 2 weeks, and then I brush it up and I have it back. But that's language maintenance for me. I also do not sit down and learn, I don't know, Finnish cases again. I just use the language.
So let's talk about that. I mean, do you have, I mean, do you try, how many languages do you actively try to maintain? I mean, or do you even think about that? Or is it something that where you just naturally just follow your interests and you think, oh, I haven't read anything in Romanian for 13 weeks. I better go and pick up a book.
Yeah.
How do you approach it?
A little bit like you just said. No, actually, yes, my goal is to maintain all of the 10 languages that I consider myself able to speak. But I have 2 different groups. I have a group of languages that I almost naturally come across every single day because of my family, because of, I mean, they're spoken in my family, obviously, or I use them for work, or I come across these languages while I work. And it's like 5 or 6 languages that I get to speak or at least to listen to or to read every single day. I also live in Brussels, which is an extremely international city. It's a dream for people like me, I guess. And so there's French, there are different places where people speak different languages because it's very international.
What are the languages that you encounter on a weekly basis?
On a weekly basis, I would say, well, Italian, obviously, Finnish, French, English, German. These 5 are like daily, probably.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yes, I would say so. Yeah. And for the languages that I do not have in my daily life, I need to make the extra effort to create the opportunities to use the languages, and through using those languages, maintain them.
And so is that the breakdown then? So there are half of your languages which you're going to use come what may, and then 5 that you actually have to work hard at.
That's right. So
what does that maintenance look like then for the languages that you try to?
Yeah, I have a few different options. I have a good friend I do tandem with. He's from Iceland, and
By tandem you mean language exchange?
Yes, exactly. Yes. Exactly. Language exchange. He learns Italian, so we do a little bit of tandem language exchange once a week, just half an hour, just a little bit, not to lose touch with my broken Icelandic. Sometimes I also pay tutors for, conversation lessons for the languages that are way too far away, like Japanese. A thing or two about that. I listen to podcasts, obviously, in different languages. I mean, as long as the topics are interesting. And I also go out here in Brussels. I think it's an amazing opportunity you have here. If you want to speak Portuguese, you just go to the Portuguese bar, to the Portuguese cafe, or to the Spanish cafe. You have this kind of opportunity. Or I proactively go play ping pong, for example, in a very international group where there are Romanians, there are Japanese people. And while I play ping pong, I chat in their language, or I keep the score. Last week, I played with a Turkish guy. I only know the numbers in Turkish, but that's fine. And so we kept the score in Turkish, and he was he was flabbergasted by that. But yeah, it was fun.
I guess what you're describing there is, I mean, your environment really is so important, isn't it? And
it is. Absolutely.
But it's not everything, because it's perfectly possible to, I mean, London, you could be describing London there in your description of Brussels and its cosmopolitan nature. But I know from my experience of living in London that it's perfectly possible to live in a place like that, but then not take advantage of it.
That's right. That's what I describe as making the extra effort.
Yes.
To create those opportunities and to use them.
So let's talk a little bit about those opportunities then, because I think a lot of people are perhaps not so, for someone who doesn't have your natural experience or confidence with languages, it might seem very intimidating to go and put yourself in a situation where you're playing ping pong with Turkish and Romanian people. But how do you talk through the practicalities a little bit? How do you find those places in the first place? And then do you just turn up? Like, how do you actually approach this?
Yeah, there's a nice site called the Meetup. I think it's .com, I'm not sure, but Meetup. I use Meetup, where people from the same area can meet, and because they have a shared interest, they want to do something together. There are meetups for speaking languages also, but I prefer doing something else, in the language. It's a more natural way of using your language skills, rather than just go and only to speak the language, which is also fine. But whatever you like to do, sports especially, you can meet with people who have the same interest, and chances are you will find people from different countries. And as far as confidence is concerned, well, I think we've talked about this before, because we've known each other for, I think, almost 8 years or something like that.
Well, at least, yeah.
It's a heck of a long time. I mean, if you're a language learner, you are really you are aware of your mistakes, of your thoughts, etc. But people whom you meet outside, they don't care about your mistakes. Mostly they only care about communication and about having fun together. And and they may be curious about your passion for their language. So they're not really listening to your mistakes. You don't have any true reason to be afraid.
Yeah. And often I think one of the things that's kind of interesting within that is that I've often found that when it comes to going to events and things like that, it's better to go to stuff that's not language related specifically. So, for example, if let's say you wanted to practice your Portuguese and you went to a Portuguese English meetup. Now, there's going to be Portuguese people there, but the thing is that those people have gone there because they want to practice their English. And so you can go to these events and you're in this kind of battle where like you want to practice your Portuguese, they want to practice their English, and there's no arbiter really no one's standing there with a stopwatch saying, right, you can speak now for 30 seconds. And so it's kind of it's almost like natural selection in that kind of environment. It's whoever insists harder is going to get more practice. And I've always hated that kind of situation because it's just not comfortable. Whereas if you go to the kind of events that you were talking about where language are not the point, then to your point, you use the language as a way to discuss the activity in question.
That's right.
I remember having a big shift with this when I lived in Japan, because for the first couple of years, I would go to language events. I go to like Japanese English exchanges, or I go to like language schools or whatever. And it was so annoying and frustrating because, I mean, Japan's a bit funny with that. Japanese people often do not believe that a foreigner is speaking Japanese.
That's right.
And so you can be speaking to them in very competent Japanese, but they'll insist on replying in broken English, mostly because they don't want to often try to accommodate you in a way. It's very. Have you found the same thing?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Yeah. It's very strange. But then I remember signing up to a New York style salsa course in Roppongi in central Tokyo, and then that was one of the times when everything changed, because now suddenly everyone was there in order to focus on the dancing, and I was there doing that, and we were just speaking Japanese because they had to tell me that everything I was doing wrong, but it was great because that was when I started to make friends with a common interest that wasn't language, and then just a world of difference.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
But I guess it's one of those things. It's easy to do if you're living in the country, harder to do if you're not, right? So if you let's say you live in London and you say, right, I play football, I need to now go and find and I want to practice Finnish, so I now have to go and find a Finnish football team in London. Yeah, and it's harder. It's harder. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's shift to actually learning, because you have not learned new languages for a while, but you spent a long time earlier on in your life actually learning.
Yes.
Have you found any particular method, any particular approach? Does learning a new language tend to look the same each time for you, or has it changed?
No, the bigger revelation is that I have no method. My method is I have no method. And I often say that for me, each language is and has a different story, and also a different place in my heart and in my life. And there are a few factors that determine how I will approach a new language depending on different things. So for example, the why is very important. Okay. Motivation, you can call it motivation, or you can call it the reason why you like the idea of learning that language. And that varies for each language, especially because I am into, as we just discussed, I'm into the language itself usually, right? So I like the way it sounds. I want to know more about the language. And I will start from the aspect that I am interested in the most. For Finnish, it was the grammar. Okay. Finnish has a very complex grammar. But I famously started learning Finnish from the grammar by, reading a grammar book before going to bed, and often falling asleep on this book.
Best way to fall asleep, right?
That's right. And of course, after that, I learned all the other aspects of the language, but it was really the grammar that I started from. So the why is very important. Also, the distance between my target language and my native language, Italian, or any other language that I know very well, for that matter, is also going to be very important, because it's going to determine whether or not immersion and comprehensible input has a role of some kind.
Yes.
Because as you know, if the language you're learning is very, very close to your own native language, you can use immersion in a much, much, much more effective way and much, much earlier in the learning process compared to a language you can't understand, that it's just noise.
Yeah, let's drill down into that for a second, because I think this is easily kind of misunderstood. So the point you're making here is that, so let's say that you already speak French, mm-hmm. and you have decided to learn two languages. One of them is Chinese and the other one is Spanish. Mm-hmm. The point that you're making, if I've understood, is that as a French speaker, Spanish is very close to French, which means that immersion, or just immersing yourself in the language, either just listening and reading all day or going to the country, means you're going to pick up a lot very quickly because of the proximity of the language. And so it's a very worthwhile, effective, fast,
early on already, yes,
technique from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you try to do the same thing for Mandarin Chinese, so you just mm-hmm. listen to nothing but Chinese all day long, maybe you went to China, very little is going to go in. Uh-huh. Because there's too much distance between your current understanding of French and literally everything in the language, from tones to grammar to vocabulary. And so you can still immerse, and immersion will still work over time, but it might be the difference between having to do it for 10 years or 10 weeks almost. Have I got that right?
Yes, that's pretty much what I was trying to convey. Yeah. So the more distant language is going to need more work on the basics, I guess. It's going to, you're going to need to create a stronger foundation, because you don't have that. You kind of have already a good foundation when you learn a language that is very close to your own, because it's in the same family, and languages actually share those foundations. You see what I mean? So you can much more easily build vocabulary on foundations that are already common, which you can't do for Chinese in our case.
Am I right in thinking that so you speak Portuguese, which is obviously very close to many other languages that you speak. Yeah. So can I surmise from that when you learned Portuguese, essentially you were just immersing yourself in the language, you were reading books, you were watching TV, you were going to Portugal, and then you ended up learning?
Pretty much.
That way, is it that simple?
Because I learned Portuguese a long time ago, we did not have YouTube at that time. I'm that old.
Me too.
No worries. So I could not really immerse myself at the level that it would be possible today, which is an amazing opportunity for new learners. So I did attend a course, but I felt really that the language was coming to me, like I was absorbing like a sponge. And very, very early, I was able to read magazines in Portuguese. And that's exactly what I started doing, because I wanted to build my vocabulary on that common foundation that I already had, thanks to the Italian language.
So nice work if you can get it. Easy for those who have common languages. But now let's talk about how things change when you're learning more difficult languages. Mm-hmm. So you've been learning Japanese for a while. You speak some Mandarin Chinese as well, I think. Any other languages that you would put in that kind of difficult category?
Well, Finnish.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So then what does Stefano do differently when he approaches a language like Finnish or Japanese?
I would start much earlier to look at the at the way people actually use the language in everyday life, rather than focus too much on written textbook language. You know, you know very well how Japanese kind of has this problem, because if you focus so much on textbook Japanese, you quickly realize how different it is from the way people use the language in everyday life. So that's something that I've learned over the years, to not focus too much on the written version of the language, the more, you know, the more formal one. That's as far as what I would do differently. But
so so does that mean then, on a practical level, does that mean we're not using textbooks here?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Does that mean that we're not using? So if we're trying to, if we are avoiding, if we are de-emphasizing written material, what are we doing instead?
I would choose a textbook that is based on everyday language, that is based on everyday conversation, rather than, you know, long written texts and a very like academic approach. Okay. Because if the textbooks are not bad per se, they can be really, really good. In fact, that's what I've always used, at least one textbook to follow as the backbone of my language learning story. But it needs to be a textbook that bases its method or its way of teaching this language on dialogue and on the way people actually use the language. See what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is how we get started, and of course, it's like a textbook will cover the, you know, the A1, maybe the A2 in the language. But obviously, most of the work in learning a language comes much further down the line, doesn't it? You know, when you're taking an immersion-based approach on a familiar language, what's interesting about that approach is that you're kind of, the levels start to blur, really, don't they? Because you're getting exposure to very advanced language together with like very simple language.
That's right.
But then with harder languages, my experience has always been that it's much more of a linear progression, because you have to kind of build up knowledge. So we started a language like Finnish or Japanese, and we've been through these early stage textbooks. How do you approach then learning what comes next?
Well, first of all, you have to, with hard languages or very, very distant languages, you have to accept that the beginning phase is going to be longer and progress is going to be probably slower, even though linear. And I also would use more repetition as a tool. Lots and lots of repetition, just in order to create, to consolidate that foundation. You know, it's easier to build upon a foundation if it's really, really strong. So before anything else, before switching to a different method or a kind of immersion, I would make sure that the foundation is really, really, really strong. And then if I cannot find immersion materials, such as like intermediate podcasts for intermediate learners, you typically, for hard languages, you typically find only or almost only beginner level materials, right? And then you know, materials
for native speakers directly.
For native
There's nothing in between.
Yeah. So in that case, I think tutors become absolutely fundamental, because if they are good tutors, they can adapt to your level and they know what you're missing and they help you bridge that vast space that you have between beginner and advanced.
But I suppose that can't be the full story, though, can it? Because because instruction is only a tiny part of the language learning process, isn't it? And you can have as much instruction as you want in B2 level Finnish, but where the learning happens is in your contact with the language, right? Not talking about it. So
no. When I talk about tutors, I don't mean instruction, pure instruction. I mean using the language with someone who is able to help you bridge what you're missing.
Right. So you're talking about practical, actual hands-on time spent speaking.
Yeah. So conversation practice that you can do with tutors who are paid for that. So they're going to show up like 100% and they're going to be able to help you bridge the gap. But also with people, if you are lucky enough to have friends, that's even better, of course, because it's also free of charge and it's very, very natural. But that's what I meant with tutors. I actually meant conversation practice. If you can't find, I mean, for some languages, it's possible to find some intermediate materials. I think for Japanese, there's quite a lot now. And again, there's this big difference between what language learning is now and what it was 20 to 25 years ago when I was in the middle of it. So
I'm curious. I recently recorded a podcast with Kirsten Cable, who's been doing a lot of who's been doing a lot of work with AI. What role, if any, does AI play in your language learning?
In my language learning, not much. Not much because I haven't probably because I haven't started learning new languages lately when AI has become very, very present in our lives. But if I were to start a new language, I would probably make some use of it to practice speaking even at very, very early stages without having to annoy someone with my broken with my broken knowledge or with my very, very low skills. So that's a positive that I would absolutely make use of.
Yeah, because I suppose when we're talking about maintenance and just using the language to enjoy well, for the reason that we all learn languages, right, which is to enjoy our lives with that language at the center. There's really no need for AI at that point, right? Because you want to spend your time with authentic content as much as possible.
That's right. Yeah.
Stefano, thank you so much. It's been, it's interesting because I talk to lots of people, and often people have, specific methods and approaches. But I think what, in your eclecticism, if that's even a word, what we really find is this. The truth about what language really is and what it means to us in different parts of our life and different ways. So thanks so much for that. Where can people find you if they'd like to learn more about your world?
Yeah, as I mentioned at the beginning, I have a YouTube channel. It's called Lingua e Passione, which is Italian for language and passion. And I share my passion for languages there. I talk about different languages in different languages. I give tips on more fun and rewarding language learning experience. And that's something that I do absolutely for fun. So I hope people who watch can also have fun.
Oh, absolutely. It would be a sad state of affairs if it wasn't fun. Yeah, we'll link your channel in the description. And thanks so much, man. We will. Well, I'm seeing you later this evening. But listeners will hear from you at some future date, yet to be determined.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Talk soon.
Talk soon. Ciao.